know when you moved to Dubai, you had a goal of breaking the stigma around mental health. And here we are, 11 years later, you built Lighthouse, you host the most support groups in the entire, I think, region in like one center as well.
Yes,
So
yes.
would you say that you've accomplished that goal so far, or is there still some work that you think needs to be done?
Oh no, no, no. The day we're done is the day I'll be done.
Okay.
But no, we are a far way away from globally, by the way, this is not just regionally, from breaking the stigma of mental health. You
Yeah.
know, a lot of times, this is what I'm seeing happen, by the way. There's companies that are saying, oh, and mental health is important and mental illness is an issue. But then the leader of that company, the CEO of that company, he sees a therapist, but he's not willing to tell anyone that. There's no disclosure of that. And I'm not saying that you need to, but if we're really going to break down the stigma, then you need to start sharing your struggles with people, especially when you are in a place of leadership. I very consciously, and I talk to my therapist about this, that I tell people I have a therapist. I tell everybody my children have therapists, and I've asked their permission. And, you know, I've asked their therapist if this is something I can disclose. My husband has a therapist, and he is in a very, you know, in a powerful position, and he has the power to influence something here.
Mm.
And to say that I struggle, and this is part of my mental health hygiene, that I see a therapist to keep myself aligned, like I would see a coach to keep myself aligned. I think this is what's next. Yeah, fine, we're all talking about mental health, but no one's owning it. You know, no one wants to say, well, oh, I see a therapist, because then people are going to be like, well, what's wrong with you? Nothing is wrong with me. And why should there be something wrong with me? I just want to talk about my struggles. Like, I don't have to have a diagnosis to see a therapist. Like, I just have to say, I'm hurting and I'm going through a divorce, or I'm really struggling with parenting. And, you know, COVID happened and I really feel afraid and anxious. What's wrong with this? But people are afraid to say that. You know, there's juniors, especially in these professional services firms that I work with, there are juniors that aren't able to say it to the senior partner because they don't want to be seen as weak, or, you know, too millennial or too whatever, because
Yeah.
that's what they get labeled as. Like, oh, come on, man, toughen up. Because we still have that mentality.
Yeah.
We still do. And so the stigma and the awareness and the owning and the sharing all come hand in hand. We
Yeah.
have a ways to go.
Have a ways to go. But I think you said something that's so important is, like you said, people talk about it and there's definitely more awareness about it. But I think the key thing that you said is taking ownership of it and not being afraid, not necessarily sharing, but owning that I'm going to a therapist. Doesn't have, you don't have to disclose what it is, but taking that ownership, because especially like you said, in companies and corporates, it starts from the top down. Influence comes from the top, and that's how you influence the rest
That's
of
it.
them. 100%.
Yeah, I think it's just for people in place of power to share that you struggle.
Yeah.
You don't have to share that you see a therapist, but to share that there are weeks where I don't want to get out of bed, and to say that there are times where my heart feels like it's going to jump out of my chest because I'm so anxious. All of a sudden you give people permission to say, oh shoot, I feel that way too. And that's where I think the vulnerability is lacking.
Yeah.
And that vulnerability, awareness is there, but the stigma very much is still standing strong.
Yeah. Yeah. But we'll see how things go over the next couple of years. But the way things are moving, hopefully, people start,
Yeah.
taking ownership and becoming more vulnerable.